We're back, everybody. Straight is the path and narrow the way. Yes, welcome to the Right Path to Retirement. Yes, the Right Path to Retirement podcast with Jimmy Lynn, the president, founder, and financial advisor at Right Path Wealth Management. Let me get right to it. You can call Jimmy's offices up in Las Vegas, Nevada, or thereabouts, 702-805-7000. And you can go to rightpathwm.com, get that complimentary consultation. And Jimmy, I know sometimes you're out, whether it's libraries or restaurants doing different events with people. And I know you're also involved in community service too. So you're not just found in the office, and you can meet with people virtually as well.
Yeah. We're out in the community, meeting people, doing seminars, educational events. We do library events, dinners. So we stay busy in Las Vegas, and we'd love to meet with the people out there. The only thing, Doug, I don't want any of the listeners to come to me for any technical advice, because as we experienced before this podcast, is that I'm not the best with tech and like getting mics to work, and this whole Zoom thing is a little challenging right now, but we're working through it.
Well, that is correct. Okay. We try to get the best audio quality possible for you all sitting there listening to about a 15-minute podcast episode. Okay. That is correct. If we were doing like one of those counters, like the Right Path to Retirement by the numbers, we'd be on one computer restart, two microphones. I hope we don't have any 3s and 4s in there, because then it just prolongs the wait to get this thing started even more. But thank you, Jimmy, for being patient with that and for doing this. You're with people every 2 weeks. You and I get together and record these in pairs, and I really enjoy it. And today we're going to talk about something that's morbid, but hopefully it leads you down the right path to the right place. And so I think most people listening are familiar with this really odd story that came out at the end of February, where Gene Hackman and his wife of many years, were found dead at the same time. And normally when you hear a story like that, it's immediately, foul play and all that. And we've come to learn, and almost immediately they said out of the gate, this is not foul play. We're just trying to figure out the sequence of events. And what they've learned, Jimmy, is that his wife was found, and I want to say her name correctly. I always talk about Gene Hackman, but his wife, Betsy Arakawa, who's a pianist, she actually had passed away around February 11th of a rare disease, a respiratory disease that's acquired by actually being around rodent droppings. And then Gene Hackman, who is suffering from heart issues and Alzheimer's, according to his pacemaker, its last activity was February 18th. So she was dead in the house February 11th. He survived a week later and then passed away, apparently just didn't eat and just passed away. So he didn't have the wherewithal to call the authorities, right? People weren't checking on him, apparently, and they were not actually found until around February 26th or so. So over a week after Hackman passed away. So she'd been there almost over 2 weeks. He'd been over a week. One of their 3 dogs was still in the kennel, so it passed away, hadn't been fed, and 2 other dogs were roaming the property. The front door was open. A really strange story. And I do not know. We don't have the information, Jimmy, unless you do. I don't think I do, on what their long-term care plans were, right? But it certainly seemed that they both needed some help, or at least a point of contact there. So, Jimmy, this discussion goes far outside of people's finances, but also includes their finances. And I know you've walked a lot of people through the aging process. So take it away. What are some things we can pull away from this awful situation from the Oscar winner?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing is just really appreciating Gene Hackman to begin with, right? The reason why this is in the news is just because of the legendary actor and artist that he was. I mean, my memories of him, my best memories is the movie Hoosiers, right? Where he goes into Indiana and basically brings a bunch of, for lack of a better word, scrubs, and brings them to that national championship. And it's just such an inspirational story. I loved Unforgiven. And by all accounts, I didn't know a lot about his later years, but I think he and his wife have been married for a long time. And they moved out to New Mexico really to kind of get away from that Hollywood scene and just live a peaceful life. And it's no different than in retirement, right? People are grinding away at whatever their profession is. And when it's time to pull that ripcord and go into retirement, people kind of want to just get away. And so I think really what this story illustrates is that path to retirement. And what we see here is not only that the commonalities between Gene Hackman, who is not like the rest of us, but his path to retirement is the same. He worked hard, and as he retired, he wanted to just go off into the sunset. But what the parallels with a normal retirement also show that long-term care is something that you need to be proactively thinking about. I believe the age difference between Gene Hackman and his wife are pretty significant. I think 30 years.
It was like 30 years, like 65 versus 95,
right.
Something like that. Yeah.
So what it appears to have happened was that, and this is common from what I see in the community, is that the spouse almost took that caretaker role, because as a 95-year-old man, none of us are invincible. I know that Gene Hackman was in Superman, but at some point, no one can be Superman anymore, right? So at age 95, there's no doubt that he required a lot of care. And being a 65-year-old, his spouse definitely had the ability to take care of him. But that's kind of what long-term care is for a lot of people. The solution is, that you're going to age, you're hoping that you're going to age, but what is that plan for when you can't take care of yourself? And usually the fallback for most people, their plan is a loved one helping them out, right?
Yeah.
So everyone has a long-term care plan. It just may not be the right plan. But if you're a married couple and you don't have any type of long-term care coverage, and guess what? You are each other's long-term care plan.
Right. And if you're not communicating with people enough, so you got the sense, and I don't know what the children's situation was there. I don't know any of that. All right. But you got the sense that they were living in New Mexico and they were not rapidly in touch with people.
Correct. That's what I said.
Maybe it wasn't uncommon to not hear from them for 2 weeks. So it's like people around them may not know that the situation's deteriorating even before one of them dies. And it's like, what situations can people put into place even before we're talking about having the money to pay for a nursing home, right? What situations do you recommend people put in place? I know there's like contacts, different things, that best practices to do to kind of plan for the plan for the plan.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, and I take it back to my own life. If Doug, I think I've told you in the past, but, and I'd say this a lot in our seminars, that, in my life, my father was a huge inspiration. He came to America, brought my brothers and sisters, and then my sister and I were born here, and he lived the American dream. What I don't tell in these seminars, because it's obviously deeply personal, is during my father's latter years, the past 3 years of his life, he was basically bedridden. But our long-term care plan was my mother. And my dad was probably in his late 80s. My mom was in her late 70s. So she wasn't, the strongest person at that point. But she was taking care of him, changing his clothes, bathing him, cleaning him, feeding him, all of those activities of daily living that we talk about that people can lose. That was my father. He couldn't bathe himself. He couldn't feed himself. He couldn't change his own clothes. And so the long-term plan in her situation was her. And that's not going to be ideal for most people. So what you want to do is make sure of, and what I've started proactively doing in my brothers and sisters, is really communicating with my mother every single day to make sure, hey, everything okay? Yeah. You haven't fallen, because you fall and nobody knows about your whereabouts. You're stuck at home for a week, without being able to get up. That obviously is a deadly recipe.
A lot of people know someone. You either know someone or you know someone that knows someone that's had just that happen to them.
100%. And so let's talk about the solution, right? Because I think that long-term care is something that literally applies to anyone. I mean, if you've reached the age of like 65, I think statistics show that if you're a male, your statistics on average, you're going to live to about 82 to 83. And if you're female, you're probably going to live till 86, 87. So long-term care is something that has to be addressed. It's not optional. But what we've seen is that long-term care is very, very expensive. If you decide to just purchase a long-term care plan, especially if you decide like you've retired and now you're starting to think about these things and being a concern, you purchase that, it's probably unaffordable for most people. And what also happens is if you're paying that bill, it's almost like paying for auto insurance, right? It's great if you need it, then it was worth it. But if you never use it, all that money kind of goes down the drain. So there are options, though. There are a lot of options that people are not aware of. And I've actually coincidentally been involved in a lot of these with my clients as of late, just because for some reason, And I don't know if it's related to this Gene Hackman situation, but for some reason, long-term care is top of mind for a lot of my clients. And a couple of different options, life insurance and annuities, they work as really, really good vehicles to help fund part of your long-term care needs. I'll talk about, there are life insurance policies that you utilize and you're not even using it for the life insurance. Oftentimes you're using those for the long-term care benefits that they create. So simple example, everyone's situation is different. I'll give you an example of one I recently saw where somebody put in $100,000 into a long-term care insurance policy. That insurance policy is going to grow in value. So it's almost like putting it in a high yield savings account. But attached to that is the benefit of, if that individual dies, they're going to get a tax-free life insurance payout to their beneficiary. But on top of that, and really what's more related to what we're talking about today, is if that individual loses 2 of their 6 activities of daily living, then they qualify for an accelerated payout of that life insurance policy. Meaning, if they were going to get $250,000, the carrier is actually going to pay that out to the individual if they qualify for some long-term care. And it could be, if you have confinement care, you got to go to a nursing home, they'll pay you out over the 3-year period. Or if you just need help at home, some home health care, you can get payouts over a 5-year period. So it's really going to help to supplement those costs. It may not be the only source you have, but it's definitely going to soften the blow if you do have some of those requirements. So there's a lot of creative different ways to do it. I mean, we've looked at things like annuities that can accelerate some payouts whenever you need long-term care. And so it's going to be situational based on the resources that these people have and what they're comfortable with. But I would say that everyone listening to this, if you are retired, no matter what your resources are, you have to at least ask the question of, what could I do to address this? Because remember, if you do not have a plan, you are choosing a plan, but your plan is your spouse helping you, or if they're willing, your son or daughter helping you, or a neighbor helping you. So you are making a plan, but it may not be the most optimal plan. So that's why we always want to make sure that, anyone listening right now, reach out to us. Call us at our office, 702-805-7000, and schedule a time to come meet and just, let's talk about your situation, because there is a lot of solutions out there that kind of are outside the box of what people are aware of. And so we can kind of guide you through what may make the most sense for your situations. At least you have something in place and you're covered if a situation like that happens. You fall at home and you need some long-term care, make sure you're covered. 702-805-7000 or go to rightpathwm.com. A situation in my life where I had a great aunt, great uncle, a brother and sister who both had diminishing mental health, especially not so much the physical, but just dementia, basically. And it was like the older brother who was declining a little less rapidly was taking care of the sister. And the thing is, they lived near us, but the uncle in particular, the great uncle, did not because they weren't married or had kids ever. And the great uncle didn't really make anybody power of attorney. Like, it didn't, like basic things that you should do when you're still of right mind. And so it became really a big mess that mainly my mom and some of her cousins had to deal with. And it was almost like nobody was in charge, and you had this really weird stalemate there. And again, I'm trying not to get too much in the weeds, but the point is, if you don't plan now, hey, you're feeling healthy at age 59. You may be feeling healthy at age 65, but if you don't plan now, you're leaving an agonizing mess for yourself. You may not even be aware of it because you might be losing your mind, but it's certainly for the people that love you around you later. So I think the key component here, Gene Hackman had no reason to ever be by himself and in that situation, nor did his wife, Betsy Arakawa. And yet they ended up there, however so. And it just means the one last point, Jim, is just the actual
importance of proactivity.
Right. And remember, Doug, and you bring up a good point. When you're sound of mind, you want to make those decisions, not only about your long-term care, insurance coverage, but to your point, things like your estate plan, your trust, making sure who's going to be in charge if you're incapacitated. Make those decisions now. Otherwise, you may end up having a judge that you've never met making these decisions for you. So it's really important to touch on these things.
That's a great point too. Yeah, we didn't even talk about like succession. Okay, yeah, the whole legacy planning thing is huge. We'll get more into that another time. Well, Jimmy, thank you so much for enlightening us here on this topic. I know your dad and all the success of rags to riches, but then also not having enough in retirement is a big inspiration for why you're doing what you're doing now. So thank you for being transparent with everybody and, of course, enlightening us too.
Always a pleasure, Doug. Thanks a lot.
A pleasure is ours. Lighting up the right path. That is Jimmy Lynn, president, founder, and financial advisor at Right Path Wealth Management. Again, get in touch with them, rightpathwm.com. Also, check out our past episodes here. We're up into the 20s now, all right? So we've got almost a couple of dozen of these bad boys out in cyberspace. Check them out on Apple, Spotify, or on the media tab at rightpathwm.com. And Jimmy and the team are still working on launching their YouTube page, too. So these are going to be available in multiple places, and he's going to have some other educational material there. Just search Right Path to Retirement on YouTube. But go ahead and follow it and get ready for when that stuff is coming down the pipeline. I'm Doug Turnbull. I'm your co-host. Thank you so much as well to our producer, Daniel Salerson, for getting this all put together. And we will talk to you again very soon here on Right Path to Retirement.
Insurance products are offered through the insurance business Right Path Wealth Management. Right Path Wealth Management is also an investment advisory practice that offers products and services through Impact Partnership Wealth, LLC, IPW, a registered investment advisor. IPW does not offer insurance products. The insurance products offered by Right Path Wealth Management are not subject to investment advisor requirements. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Any references to protection, safety, or lifetime income generally refer to fixed insurance products, never securities or investments. Insurance guarantees are backed by the financial strength and claims-paying abilities of the issuing carrier. This podcast is intended for informational purposes only. It is not intended to be used as the sole basis for financial decisions, nor should it be construed as advice designed to meet the particular needs of an individual situation. Right Path Wealth Management is not permitted to offer, and no statement made during this show shall constitute tax or legal advice. Our firm is not affiliated with or endorsed by the U.S. government or any governmental agency. The information and opinions contained herein provided by third parties have been obtained by sources believed to be reliable, but accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed by Right Path Wealth Management.